What's up, guys? DJ here at Top Deck Cards and Games with a standard Eldrazi aggro deck profile. Oath of the Gatewash just came out this past weekend, and I couldn't resist playing with all the new toys they gave Eldrazi. The deck seemed like a ton of fun, and I thought I'd try it out. Let's just get into the list. We'll start down at the bottom of the curve. We have 4 copies of Reaver Drone at our 1-drop, just a pretty aggressive creature. This deck is very reminiscent of like a Suicide Black deck of old with like Carnophage, Sarcomancy, those kind of cards. And this card does that exactly. It's a 1-mana 2/1, and it makes us take some damage if we don't have another colorless creature. It's our only 1-mana creature, though we do have other 1-mana spells in Ghost Fireblade, as you can see over there on the pile, but let's just finish the creatures and then we'll talk about those. At 2 mana, we have 4 Sky Scours, 4 Bearer of Silence, and 4 Forerunner of Slaughter. We are playing red-black Eldrazi because of Forerunner and Vile Aggregate as well, though I think Forerunner is really the reason to play red. This card is just so good. And it really lets us use our mana efficiently, since we can give whatever low drops we draw haste. Or big drops if we have a ton of mana, but it just lets us use our mana efficiently every turn. It makes all of our cards into threats, and I think it's just way too good to pass up on. Bear and Sky Scour are both flying threats, which makes their damage, even though it's not insane, much more consistent. And if you stick a Ghost Fireblade on either of them and you're coming in for, let's say, 4 damage a turn, since all the spells in our deck are colorless, so this guy's likely to get pumped every turn, and Bearer of Silence is always going to be a 2/1. That's just really strong when we can fly in with 2 power or 4 power every single turn. On top of that, this guy can grow exponentially bigger than that, which makes him even more of a threat. And the Bearer of Silence has the ability to make our opponent sack a creature if we dump an extra colorless and a generic mana into him. So this guy scales pretty well through the whole game, and with nutty draws, this one can be dealing 1,000,000 damage every turn. In our 3-drop slot, we have 4 Matter Reshaper and 4 Vile Aggregate. Matter Reshaper is extremely sticky and replaces itself in all situations, so it's likely to either beat in with its damage or trade very effectively, wasting our opponent's tempo. And Vile Aggregate has 5 toughness, so it's just a very hard creature to block with trample as well. If you have a draw where you get a lot of creatures in play, this guy does 1,000,000 damage, he's colorless, he's got trample, he's everything you could really ask for in an aggro deck when you have an aggressive draw. Matter Reshaper, again, is just really sticky, and between the two of these, they make our boards a little bit harder to remove. Next, we have 4 copies of Thought-Knot Seer. Thought-Knot Seer is a little bit slow for your traditional aggro deck, but I think you can afford it in this deck since you want to have some sort of reliable, not card advantage, but you want to have some solid card quality in this deck. We're not as aggressive as a mono-red deck. We're more akin to like a mono-blue Devotion deck of the past. We're an aggressive deck, but we thrive off synergy and off of just our cards being very good when played together. And if we can take our opponent off of resources while putting an almost must-answer 4/4 into play, it takes a lot of heat off of our Vile Aggregates and our Flyers, so just push more damage through. Last creature, we have 2 Reality Smashers. It's just the top end of the curve. It's a little bit expensive in the deck. I thought about playing like a 25, 26 land mana base and playing 4 of them to go bigger, but then you lose a lot of the value on your little creatures. Non-creature spells, we have 4 copies of Ghost Fireblade. It's just so insane in this deck. You saw how good it was in the Thopter deck if you've been playing for a while, and it's almost similarly good in here. And then 2 copies of Warping Whale. Warping Whale shuts off some of the ramp spells, kills a lot of little creatures. It's awesome when your opponent tries to like become immense, their guys or something, to just kill them. And it can get us out of a jam if we're mana screwed. Our mana is a bit rough since we need to make colorless mana while also having enough sources to play a turn 1 black creature, turn 2 red-black creature. So because of that, we have 4 Corrupted Crossroads, and then 3 copies of Battlefield Forge, and 3 copies of Caves of Koilos. This makes our mana base super painful, and it's kind of a bear on your life total in red matchups, but it is what it is. Your deck has a lot of value. It's not relevant against the slower decks, and I've just accepted being the dog to mono red game 1. Then we have 4 copies of Bloodstained Mire. Since we have an on-color fetch in the format, it makes things a little more doable as far as our life total. With that, we have 3 Swamps, 2 Mountains, and a Smoldering Marsh. You can get away with 1 Mountain for sure, but I wanted my Smoldering Marsh to come into play untapped occasionally, so I stuck with 2. Another thing you can consider doing is playing a Evolving Wilds mana base, then you can play Wastes to get colorless mana that's fetchable, but we have so many colorless sources it's not an issue. Finally, we have 2 copies of Blighted Fen and 2 Seagate Wreckage. If you curve out aggressively, Seagate Wreckage giving you an extra card every turn is just insanely powerful. And against decks that want to land some bigger creatures, kind of ramp-based decks, Abzan decks, Blighted Fen is just too good to pass up. I chose that over Blighted Gorge because of just the different higher-end decks, which is where I really wanted my deck to shine. I've kind of accepted the mono-red matchup isn't great. There are a couple of other utility lands that didn't make the cut that I think could be really good. Mirror Pool is one of those cards. being able to make an extra copy of one of your little creatures or big creatures especially, something like a Reality Smasher, was really good. We get almost no value out of the copy of spell ability though, so we decided against playing it. And then Ruins of Oran Reef was also really good. It's another card that lets your deck be extremely mana efficient. If you need all your mana, you don't use it. If you can spare any mana, you make creatures 1/1 bigger, or one of your creatures rather. And I think this one should be in the deck somewhere, but I haven't figured out how to do that, if I need to go up a land to afford some come into play tapped lands, so on and so forth, because you really don't want your lands to ever come into play tapped in an aggressive deck that's aiming to curve out. So maybe we need to go a little bit bigger for that. That would be something like we play some of these and go up to 4 Reality Smashers maybe. Who knows? Same thing with the Mirror Pool. The more Reality Smashers you play, the better it gets, since that's more giant creatures you can trade a land for. So maybe it's worth curving out. Other than that, another card that was pretty close to making the cut was Murderous Cut. No pun intended. Murderous Cut is just a really strong card, being able to kill any of our opponent's creatures, but it wasn't something that really came through in this deck. It's something we needed for sure. Lastly, I really wanted to make something work with a little bit of a Processor theme, an Exile theme, so we could play Wasteland Strangler. But most of the cards that remove are very average, so I chose to stay away from it. Like, Sludge Crawler is good, not good. Sludge Crawler is serviceable. Transgress the Mind is good. Dominator Drone is serviceable, and Complete Disregard is good. So those are really the options I felt like I was left with. You can obviously play a bigger deck with cards like Oblivion Sower that exile, but I don't see a reason in Standard to be casting my Wasteland Stranglers on turn 6 after I've played my Oblivion Sower. So that was the reason I chose not to play those. I guess one last little piece. I think Eldrazi Mimic is a fine card in the deck, but not consistent enough. I like the 2-drops. I'm playing more. And Eldrazi Displacer is actually very good, but there's not enough in this specific list to make big value out of it. So I chose to stay away from that card as well, even though we play enough white mana to cast it reliably, especially if we played it as just a 2-of or something. One final thing, I've said one last thing like 4 times, but whatever. If you want to make your mana a little bit less painful, you can use Crumbling Vestige somewhere in there. This does make mana the turn you play it, though it only makes your colored mana, so you have to plan your land drops a little bit more carefully if you're going to use this card. But it does take a little bit of heat off your life total by giving you colored mana for the cost of no life, and it does get whichever color you need. So that's definitely something to consider. It could make the deck a little bit more resilient to aggro decks, but I don't think that replacing like some pain lands with Crumbling Vestiges is going to be the thing that makes the red matchup good game 1. To beat red, we're going to focus heavily on our sideboard, which I do not have a copy of here. I do think tuning your sideboard to your local meta is very important, so I will leave you guys with that as far as sideboarding is concerned. But yeah, just some removal, life gain type cards, whatever you can fit in. You can make the red matchup winnable through siding. You can even choose to side into like the bigger deck, kind of play some bigger Eldrazi creatures, along with bringing in like Flaying Tendrils and stuff. And I think that's probably the best way you can solve that matchup, though. Again, I do unfortunately think the red matchup's just not going to be good with this list, no matter what I do. So that's the main thing I'll be working on with it, trying to solve that. If you guys have any suggestions for fixing the mono red matchup, let me know down below in the comments. I'd be happy to see what you guys have to say. And I'm definitely interested in listening to any ideas you have. So let me know what you think down below, what you think of the deck, what you thought of the video, anything you'd want me to improve on. And thanks for watching, guys.